recording everything.
It's recording right now? Record, okay. Playing it back. No, it's not gonna.
So before we talk about this essential question, I actually want to talk about something else for just a minute. Last Wednesday, a week ago today, I was in Albany, New York. And I had been there for about a week, a little less than a week, visiting my mom. And we were scheduled to fly out of Albany, connect in Baltimore, and then fly to San Diego, leaving Albany at about 5 o'clock on last Wednesday evening. Some of you may be aware that, and the part that maybe I should mention, on Southwest Airlines. Some of you may be aware, apparently, that Southwest had an issue last week with their computer system. And so when we arrived at the airport, we were told our entire nationwide computer system is down. We can't print boarding passes. We can't board airplanes. We don't know which planes are in the air. We don't know what connections you're going to make or not make. We don't know anything. And so that was a little disconcerting. But we were still on the ground, so we really couldn't do anything but wait. And over the course of the next few hours, that story really didn't change. And I was amazed. I shifted from, what's this going to do to us, into, well, we're sitting and waiting, so now I'm going to people watch. And I was watching people interact with the Southwest employees and with each other, and I was interacting with all these folks from time to time over this few hours, and I was so impressed with how little frustration was expressed on anyone's part. There were hundreds of people in the airport who were trying to get to dozens of different locations, and no one was visibly upset. No one was angry. No one was blaming anyone. It had a very friendly kind of atmosphere or tone to the way that they were handling this crisis that they were having internally within their company. And I started to wonder why. And so I was watching all of these Southwest employees. Every one of them that I interacted with had a friendly attitude, an attitude of service, and one that was aimed at trying to help me get what I needed, even though they weren't in a position to totally make that happen. A couple of times I saw them work with folks who said, we were supposed to be in wherever we're supposed to be, and we thought we would be able to get in or there. And one of the gate agents disappeared for a minute, came back with a cart full of plain snacks, and said, made an announcement to the whole gate area, help yourself to these snacks. And it was, pretzels and peanuts and those little graham cracker cookies and things. It wasn't dinner, but it was beyond what they had to do for us as well. And so I started to wonder, partly because I was curious and partly because I was stuck in Albany, what is Southwest Airlines' mission and vision? How do they operate in a way that what I'm seeing happen here could be a reflection of? And so I looked it up, and Southwest Airlines' vision is to become the world's most loved, most flown, and most profitable airline. And the mission of Southwest Airlines is dedication to the highest quality of customer service, delivered with a sense of warmth, friendliness, individual pride, and company spirit. That was on display throughout the experience that we had. Ultimately, we got to Baltimore, waited a few more hours, landed here in San Diego in the middle of the night, but we got home a few hours later than we were going to get home. And the experience, while not ideal, was also not a nightmare, even though it had the potential to be. And I think that's the experience that most of the folks who were experiencing this with us had. When the plane that we were going to take off from Albany came in from wherever it came in from, as people got off that plane, the crowd in the gate area cheered for them as they were walking through the terminal. They were excited for them that they got to where they were trying to go, and also excited that their plane was here, right, so we could take off. But it became clear that prior to the crisis, prior to the computer issue, within this company, the company leadership, and then by extension, all of their employees are clear in their communication and in their vision, in their mission, and in their common focus and goal when it comes to building the capacity of their employees, empowering their employees to understand that they can make the decisions they need to make to move forward with that vision. That gate agent who went to get the food didn't call somebody and ask if it was okay if she did that. She just went and did it because she knew it would help promote the vision and the mission that the company has. There was an element of relationship building, trust, transparency that Southwest has engaged in prior to last Wednesday that allowed us to trust that they were doing what we needed them to do to be able to help us. They had credibility because of past performance, and that past performance was built around a set of values that permeate their company. So the crisis management was successful not because of the way that they managed the crisis, but because of the things they've done prior to the crisis. So in short, Southwest Airlines has systems in place. Southwest Airlines can operate in a way that creates clarity and commitment to the organization's vision. They have a system that breeds a healthy internal culture. They have a system that ensures a high level of professional service, that builds capacity in employees across the organization, and that maximizes the use and efficiency of their resources even when those systems are taxed or when their infrastructure breaks down. And so as I'm experiencing this and then reflecting on it, I'm thinking our schools are really no different. Our schools are present us with the same opportunities to put systems like these in place so that we can leverage the collective capacity of our staff and our community, build trust in our colleagues, build trust in our clients, and ultimately empower our school communities to embrace challenges. And so as we explore and learn about systems leadership this next couple of days, you'll hear some of these same ideas and same characteristics and qualities that I saw in Southwest Airlines will be centerpieces of some of the conversations and the learning that we'll do over the next couple of days as we seek to kind of deepen our own understanding around effective systems and leadership in schools. So with that in mind, we have an essential question that drives the work that we do here at San Diego County Office of Education. And that is this: how do we use systems thinking leadership to promote continuous learning that ensures equity? I want to talk for a moment about the concept of equity, or the word equity, but we'll parenthetically reference that as access and support for the moment. That ensures equity for each and every student and student group. If you would take 30 seconds at your table and make meaning of this question. What is this question asking? What questions do you have about this question? How is this essential question resonating with you as you see it for the first time?
More metacognitive with my staff so that they know what my thinking is when I put something in place and where they fit in and everybody else fits in, so that we're making it work for our entire community.
And it sounds like within that people understand what their role is there and how to make that happen.
You spoke about how many systems we need and the domino effect, and not only the systems, but having that collaborative, making those systems. What do our systems need? What do the people need? And how is it communicated? And just how overwhelming it can be when you need multiple systems.
Yeah. So the big system is comprised of a bunch of little systems, right? And it's understanding what those are and how they relate and interact with each other, and the implications that one has on another that's part of the challenge of leadership.
And also the distributive piece of that, so it's not all top-down driven, but who's taking which role.
Good. Okay. So what about this word equity? When you hear the word equity, what do you think of?
Current practice not being fulfilled.
Okay, lack of equity in many places now. Yeah, okay.
People getting what they need.
People getting what they need. Okay.
Achieving the gap.
Bridging the gap. Social justice. So we have we've kind of gotten into the habit, I think, as a profession across education, of using the phrase equity and access as a well-intentioned effort to give people what they need and bridge the gap and implement social justice and things like that. As we were putting today's information together, we had a concern that that we now start to gloss over that phrase, that term, equity and access, in a way that it doesn't speak to the depth of the need, nor does it speak to really the limitation of the word access. Right? That when we provide equitable access, that's only the beginning of developing a truly equitable system. Right? So that's why we've added here access and support, and ultimately in service of success for each and every student. And so as we go through our work this next couple of days, we want to keep that lens on what we're doing and think about the implications of our leadership and of our implementation of systems in terms of equitable access, support, and success for each and every student, and pause from time to time and make sure that we have been considerate of those implications in a way that maybe hasn't always been our habit or hasn't been the habit of the institution or the system that we've worked within for much of our careers, but is so critical to making sure that we are successful as a system now that we need to be explicit about it in the way that we do our work here and moving forward. And I think there likely are degrees of success and failure related to equity, access, support, and success in our schools, represented here in this room, and that's something that we certainly want to leverage the experiences that have taken place and the questions that exist among us to use our collective capacity here so we can grow in that direction as well. So this essential question will drive the work that we're doing today, tomorrow. It actually is still part of the work that happens when you come back to do our targeted feedback portion. Later on, most of you are coming next month, and a couple alternative dates, and then we'll have a fifth day later that we'll talk more about as the days go along. But one of the things we know is that you're here because you've got a commitment to and a belief in your role as a leader in helping to make change and to make schools effective in your own communities. And so we know that without great leadership, our schools will stay still. The single greatest influence on a student's learning is their teacher, and not far behind that, the second greatest influence on a student's learning is the school principal or leadership. And so I'm preaching to the choir here, but this slide is in here to kind of remind us that leadership matters, that it's important, and that your investment in your own learning is critical to the investment that we make in our kids' learning as well. So, that in a little while today, you'll be able to articulate the value of and the need for systems leadership, and hopefully you'll do that using some of the language and context that you'll find in the tools that we're going to share, specifically the systems leadership framework today. So when we think of systems leadership, we're going to approach this or unpack this in three different contexts. We're going to talk first about who we are as leaders. Then we're going to look at what we do as leaders. And then finally this morning, how we go about doing that leading. So there are some technical aspects of that. There are some soft skills involved. But at the core of it, there are some beliefs that we that drive the work that we do. And so our first task today is to reflect a little bit on who we are as leaders. What it is that has drawn us to this work, why it is that we are where we are in terms of our professional career path or professional experiences. So in your folders, you have on the right side, on the left side, behind the PowerPoint, we've already got the PowerPoint out, it would be the next sheet. You've got something called Leadership Reflection. It's got 4 little prompts on it. I'm going to ask you to spend a little time independently thinking about each of these prompts. We're going to go one at a time. So the first prompt is, I became a leader because, and you can answer that any way you'd like. We're going to, this is an exercise that those of us who work here have engaged in. We did it in a slightly different way, but it involved, ultimately, as we go through these 4 prompts, finding an association with a song that resonates with us. Right? That I became a leader because, and my purpose and values are, and you see this in my school when, and this year's work will be, all of those ideas. The power that music has to help capture those ideas and emotions is impressive. We're not going to ask you necessarily to bury your soul with the song of choice, but we want you to just be thinking about, is there a song, is there a soundtrack to your ideas around these prompts? And what we're going to do as you answer them is play some of the songs that our team came up with as we engaged in this activity, just as sort of thought music in the background. If it bothers you, we'll keep it low so it's not too distracting. But we'll just play a few minutes of a few songs, and then a couple of us might share a little bit of why we chose the song we chose as we conclude our activity here. But to begin with, just focus on this first question, this first prompt. I became a leader because. Spend the next 3 minutes or so responding to that. The favor of reminding ourselves of who we are and why we do this, and we limit our lifespan probably as both leaders and potentially as people. So it is a good reminder from time to time to remember why we do what we do. And when we talk about the systems leadership framework, it encompasses all three of those aspects of who we are, what we do, and how we do it. And so it's easy, convenient sometimes, to skip over the who we are and jump right into the what we do. And so we wanted to carve out some time here to be intentional and explicit about thinking about who we are. Yes?
I just heard an echo of some of the stuff that I think we're going to talk about today, which is less focus on what students do and more focus on what they're learning.
There you go.
I heard that.
Yeah,
Less focus
doing
on what we
versus
do and
learning.
more focus on why we're doing it.
Right. Good. Yeah. Having a purpose is certainly something that we want in our work and equally students want in their work. And so a system for effective leadership that supports teaching and learning, hopefully we'll promote that across the entire school organization. Okay, so we talked a little bit about who we are in terms of our work as leaders, but that doesn't address this question of systems. We can be leaders independent of systems, right? And so answer this question at your tables. Talk for a minute. What's a system? What are we talking about? When we say systems leadership, what does that word system mean? Go ahead and unpack that for a minute at your tables, and we'll hear some ideas.
I like thinking about this.
Not in my mind.
Whether that's a temporary attitude or I think that's a solid way to think about it.
And guess what it is, and then we'll tell you what it actually is. So much as this is an opportunity for us to kind of think through what associations do we already have with the idea of a system, and then how are we going to connect those to the way we mean systems when we say systems leadership. So what came up in your conversations at your tables? What's a system?
Parents have this conception that they know the educational system, and they're very comfortable with it and they're comfortable when it's how they went through the system. And so as transformational leaders now and trying to do things different, it's very hard, and we hit up against this wall because of the system that we have had in place. So when things are going against the grain of what people are comfortable with or know, it kind of makes things be a little bit imbalanced. So I just think that it's very interesting that Daniel was sharing how he loves the fact that his kids come home from school and they are asking them to do some untraditional things, and he loves that they have to think, So it's just a good conversation.
Okay.
classroom. So any well-run classroom has routines and procedures, and every student knows the routines and the procedures, and when they need to go to the bathroom, when they need a pencil, when whatever it is, they know what to do. And when they ask, can I use the restroom, you say, what's the procedure, rather than reteaching it every time. And so it reminded me of that in a larger school sense. Teachers, when there is a system in place, will know what the system is, and then it's not different for different kids. Classrooms that don't have routines and procedures typically don't have great classroom management and aren't effective.
Okay, good, yeah, and not only do teachers know what to do, but students know what to do. too,
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, in some ways, as I was listening to you, I was thinking, all of those Southwest employees, to some degree, knew what to do, and when they didn't know what to do, knew that they were allowed to try to figure it out without having to stand in line and ask a bunch of questions and wait for a phone call and all those kinds of things. Good. Any other ideas around systems that came up in terms of the way that you've experienced them in the past or your associations with the term now? Yes.
We spoke about that, we've been to different schools and just, we might have thought maybe there wasn't systems in place, but in reality there was a system, but there was no clarity within that system, there was no, the mission, the vision, that wasn't clear to all people in that system. So we're just thinking about just how sometimes the systems break down because there isn't that clarity.
Not good, then breaks down.
Reality.
All right, so let's kind of transfer some of those ideas to the context, well, ultimately to the context of an education system. But we're going to hear for just a couple minutes here from Dr. Peter Senge, who is an author, a researcher, a professor. Much of his work is the research that drives the work and the development of ideas and information that we have pursued here at the county. And he's going to give us maybe another analogy about a system that that helps to bridge the gap between our current understanding of it and our application of it as we move forward.
The term systems thinking is really a mixed bag, and I use it very, very cautiously. First, both words are problematic, but the word system is the most problematic. Because if you say the word system, the picture image that pops up into most people's head is computer system. Like, we need a systems expert here because our system's not working. The second most common association is management control system, as it's not my fault, it's the stupid system, right? So these are the two associations that come first to people, and neither of them is what we're trying to help people understand. So whenever I'm trying to help people understand what this word system means, I usually start off by saying, are you part of a family? Everybody is part of a family. Have you ever been seen in a family, people producing consequences in the family, how people act, how people feel, that aren't what anybody intends? Yep. How does that happen? Well, then people can tell their stories and think about it, but that then grounds people in not the jargon, system or systems thinking, but the reality that we live in webs of interdependence. A family is a fairly close-knit one. You can kind of see most all the key players.
Thinking, what did he say that challenges something you might have previously been thinking? And what application do you see for the ideas that Peter Senge has shared in the context of a place like your own school? Have that conversation with someone nearby. And again, if you prefer to mix up your talk partners and move around the room, you're welcome to do that, but you can also stay where you are if you'd like. From the video and with your thinking that came up in your conversation, we have 3 folks who can share it.
The collective intelligence part, just not, there's not just the smartest people in the room that are going to run everything. You include everybody. Everybody has a voice in it, and the other word that kind of stuck out also is triangulation. Is people see a certain event or something in different ways, and just getting that out there, making sure everybody sees everybody's point of view, because If you don't, you know, systems are gonna break down because there's not that communication of understanding that they're looking at the same thing. Two more.
No, that's a tough one to follow.
Well, I wrote those two things down also, but one of the things that also kind of resonated with me was the deep commitment to learning. So when he talked about the system and, you know, system management and all that other stuff, you know, you do get a little bogged down in that, but when he came back to the core of what it is, which is that deep commitment to learning, whether it's in a corporation, as if he's talking about, or a school, or a family, that's what it is. So that was really something that stood out to me, guys.
Thank you. Yes.
My partner Jimmy here had a good thought, which was about, at the beginning, like being ready to challenge your own thinking and understanding. Because if you're solution oriented, then that's really all you care about. I think of like teams of engineers or, you know, people who are working on a new Snapchat filter over in Silicon Valley or LA or wherever, like, you know, they sit around the table, they think about, everybody puts their ideas out, and then you kind of talk about which one do you think is okay, and you have, that ego can't be there where you hold on to your idea even when it's not, it's clearly not the best one, you know.
Good. Yeah, he says you gotta be okay with the idea that you're probably wrong,
Yeah.
right? So, good. So, also from Peter Senge's research, we've captured these ideas, some of which he spoke to in the video, some of which are additional ideas, and we don't want to spend a lot of time here other than just to kind of reinforce this is where we now kind of see the intersection of what we do as leaders and who we are as leaders in terms of when you think about the responses you had to our "Who are you as a leader" prompt, and as you read through these characteristics of a systems thinker, do you see some overlap, right? Are there some things here related to the idea of building relationships, the idea of engaging in reflection, sharing vision, and so forth, that are things that we do, but because of who we are, right? And so, so these characteristics are probably fairly well ingrained in some way in most of us here in the room. You probably wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. So now it's a question of how do we leverage this? How do we use these qualities in our systems thinkingness to impact the larger system around us, right? And so that's where the idea of having a tool, having a reference point, having a framework that allows us to develop a common language and have some common conceptualization across our system about what it means to be a system becomes important. And so we're going to share with you the systems leadership framework that we've developed here at the county office. But first, just want to walk through a few sort of characteristics of it. So, you know, a systems leadership framework in general is a set of descriptions, right? It lists descriptions of leadership behaviors, for one. It's linked to systems improvement. The reason it exists is so that we can improve the work that we're doing and the experiences that our clients, our students, our families are having, our teachers are having, that we as leaders are having. You know, that's driving the existence of the systems leadership framework. It's based on the idea that there's interconnectedness and relationships across the system, and it's come up a couple times now already today that there are a lot of moving parts within a system, and so understanding, you know, that sort of butterfly effect, that when one part moves, other parts move, is important and is a key principle of a systems leadership framework. And then our framework, and really I think anytime we talk about the idea of a framework, whether it's for systems leadership or instruction or whatever it might be, you know, to have a research base is important so that we're not making stuff up and hoping that it's right. That we have some evidence that there's truth and research and experience at a large enough scale to be confident about it and to be credible in the way that we go about working through it. So those characteristics, yes, question?
I just wanted to go back a little bit to the systems thinker on the first slide, and it is something you said that stood out to me, that, you know, where most of us are already, or there's part of that that maybe falls into what we put down in our reflection about why we went into education. And I just wanted to push back on that just a little bit, because I think one of the things that is probably the most significant is the word, whether it's plural or not. I think of when I was an assistant principal, I think I was a system thinker. I was thinking of the organization, my role in it, and the parts in that school. But it wasn't until I stepped out and became a principal and did some work with systems level training that I began to think of a systems, or in a systems way, thinking of not just my role in the school as principal, but as a district at whole. And as a matter of fact, it wasn't until after my first year of being a principal that I realized that I'm really a middle manager, and my responsibility is to manage the relationships that are in all parts of the organization. And so I just kind of wanted to go back, because I know I work with folks who are still maybe thinking of the system that we're currently in and not the multiple systems in the district.
Good.
And so I just, it would be remiss of me not to point that out.
No, I appreciate that, that's good, and I didn't mean to imply that this is who you've been from the day you got into education, right? I think that's a process we all evolve, and if we aren't embracing that notion of commitment to continuous learning, then we're limiting our own capacity to influence that system. So
And just to honor the fact that some may not be there, and that may be why they're here today, to hopefully be there by the end of the year.
Absolutely, thank you, good.
I'd like to piggyback on what she had said in terms of the system, because when I first sat down, I thought I really knew a little bit, but I realized I really don't know a lot in terms of what the system is. But the best way I can, in a single word, what I can figure out in my mind to organize my thought is the fact that it's a big picture, and all of the things that my colleagues have said today fits within that big picture. But that systems thinking is a big picture, and sometimes explaining certain things the way it's done at school to teachers might have a different feel than if I had a conversation with my AP, because we look at the bigger piece of the education as they have that 25 kids, that smaller piece. And there's a system there, there's a system here at the admin level, just like Sheena said. There's also a systems in place at the HR level. So that interconnectedness was what kind of surfaced for me as Dr. Sege was speaking.
Good, thank you, very good, yeah. There is an element of all of this that's about the view that we have from the chair that we sit in, wherever we are in the system, right? And cultivating an understanding among our teachers that our view is different, and in some cases we might use the word broader or bigger than their view is. And so how do I develop within the systems that we have an understanding on their part and a trust on their part that I'm operating based on my view of the bigger system that isn't the same as their view of a slightly smaller piece of that system.
Which goes back to your first illustration about the Southwestern. The one who brought those snacks had a big vision, but he didn't know everything, but he knew that that piece needed to be done to fulfill that mission and vision of the Southwestern.
Good, yeah, thank you, good example. That's a good example. Okay, good, thank you. Good comments, good clarification, and a good reminder that the spirit of continuous learning is really the emphasis I was trying to bring to my comment on the previous slide, but it needed a little clarification. So good, thank you. So part of the challenge then in helping the larger sort of collective population within the system to understand the system and their role in it is that we don't always have a good way to describe and explain and show that. And so that's part of what the Systems Leadership Framework allows us to do. In your workbooks, the first thing in your workbook is a Systems Leadership Framework page. It's a few cardstock pages that start with this page that's got the wheel, the same wheel that's on the front, and it goes a couple pages further. There are there's some language that unpacks each of the domains that's in the wheel that we'll talk more about in a moment. This is a tool that helps us to calibrate and communicate the idea of a system and the way that our role as leaders in that system supports it, and the role and clarifies the role that others play within that system as well. So we're gonna spend a little time, these 3 pages, these 3 systems leadership framework cards contain information that addresses all 3 of these aspects, the who, the what, and the how of leadership in a systems context. We've spent a little time on the who, and that who we are piece, you can think of it either way, as it either sits under everything as a foundation, or it kind of floats over everything as something that floats, an umbrella, a balloon. But we're gonna spend a little time now looking at the what piece, and the what is kind of captured in this colorful wheel. There are 5 domains that we're capturing in the systems leadership framework that I think, as we unpack, will speak to some of the questions that have come up about recognizing the difference between a system and systems, and recognizing the difference between the view or the big picture, small picture dynamic that we heard about a moment ago, and recognizing the different roles that people can play and that we can help them to play within those systems. So we'd like to ask you to, well, first we want to kind of ground ourselves. Where did this come from, right? We've spent a lot of time and energy developing it, and it's based on a synthesis of a lot of different research. This grid is our attempt to kind of visually capture that, but we've studied research from the University of Washington, Richard Elmore and the Distributed Leadership Group out of Harvard, Vanderbilt University, Vivian Robinson, who is out of New Zealand and Australia, the Wallace Foundation. Their ideas around systems leadership are synthesized together in what we've now called our systems leadership framework. And you can see the overlap here, right? There are threads that run all the way across because research, evidence, shows that these are the high leverage key actions that leaders engage in that promote effective schools, that develop effective systems, and that impact teaching and learning in a positive way. And so ultimately, we end up with these 5 domains: advancing the vision, mission, and values, creating a learning-centered culture, ensuring high-quality teaching and learning, managing people, data, and resources, and cultivating learning and leadership, that are captured here in our wheel. And then they are unpacked a little bit on the next couple of pages with a brief description and some guiding questions. So why don't you take 5 minutes and just skim through it, kind of familiarize yourself as much with sort of the structure of the document as the content, and then we're going to give you a chance to become an expert in one of those 5 domains through a little group activity in just a couple minutes. But take a couple minutes just to orient yourself to the content and the structure of the document. So as we refer to the domains, as we refer to the different pieces of it, you'll have a sense of where those are and what they are.
Staff know the mission and vision, and in our conversation, we said they did. That's why there would be unity of purpose, and there would be evidence of office, right? We included that.
Could be unity of purpose, we could have, like you said, we could have said that, we could have written the word,
All stakeholders are
share, copy.
or have knowledge of.
We could just put that here, all
Yeah.
stakeholders, I mean, that's not a problem. Here, I would probably still say, I still want to put the words of unity of purpose here. Decisions and actions are aligned to the vision, mission, and values, then the unity of purpose leads to,
which is measurable and leads to results.
That's only true if you are, then all this would be, the sounds like, looks like, all of that is integrated into the other ones, right, to all of this. So,
Conversations are part of the teaching and
all
learning.
So it's integrated with the PD, with the policies, the shared language. Yes. And again, and this is also, right? Yeah, it's all secret. Because
and you would hear parents, you would hear students and teachers and all staff.
You know, and I would say this first part about student conversations, I think that's reflected in shared language. Something that we said but didn't write is we said not only policies but procedures. So that would go to this next one of student-created class norms reflect values. So, you know, we have some common procedures that we're using. Our language is common because we have that unity of purpose, and then there are some norms across campus that reflect either, you know, the vision or the mission or the values or more than one, you know. Because what you've said is you're constantly working to achieve this. The mission tells you why you want to achieve it and how you're going to achieve it. And the values are like how you act along the way.
Or character traits that will influence the mission and the vision.
I thought it was interesting to see 2 posters for each trait. That was good.
Yeah, so
Because then, at each dimension, because then you know, they kind of like putting them together is more fleshed out, you know.
And I like the different perspectives on that. Because each poster was different with the same message, with the same domain, but I mean the message was very similar, but just different wording and different perspectives.
I'm thinking of doing this with my staff. That's why I took a picture of them, because I think we're at a good place after we do our first workshop on visible learning that we do something like this.
What would be the text that they would study?
What are we doing? I think
All right.
something around our own
bring your
education
conversations to a
values.
close.
So we're seeing, well, how are we, you know, what does it sound like, and what questions do we have about it, something like that.
But in at least an introductory way, and we'll revisit that throughout the rest of our time. And that brings us to the question of how we lead. And the how and the who are very interconnected, and the what overlaps with that too. But so for the how, you'll notice on a couple of things on the Systems Leadership Framework card, the yellow section around the outside and the yellowish circle in the center speak to the ideas that we're going to talk about related to how we lead. And I want to point out in the very center area there around systems leaders, it says to lead others, first lead yourself. Right? And that notion of our role as learners when we're leaders is one that's been articulated already here in the room by several of you this morning. But we want to reinforce that as an important part of the way that we do our work, and the important part of the way that we help others to do their work is by modeling that learning. And we've, many of us have used or heard the term lead learner, associated with our work as site principals and administrators. So that idea of leading ourselves or allowing ourselves to be learners is important, and then leveraging that learning into the context of how we lead. And so the yellow box on the right side of this page kind of unpacks these ideas of trust, communication, alignment, transformation, and continuous learning and innovation. And so when we talk about how we lead, those are sort of the intangibles, right? We can't pick up trust and hold it, right? And we don't have a specific reference point that tells us what communication or what effective communication is. We can describe them, right? But this yellow area here on our card gives us some descriptors around the idea of these 5 areas related to how we lead, which are the sort of the vehicles for pursuing the actions within those 5 domains. Without these pieces and without a solid understanding of who we are as leaders, the who and the how, the what becomes kind of hollow, or becomes kind of random, and doesn't resonate with people. When I think back to my Southwest Airlines experience, the system that they have in place is built around or incorporates employees who know how to operate in the context of trust. Right? There was something they've done prior to the day the computers crashed that caused us to trust that they were going to do what they needed to do. Their communication was consistent for a few hours. It was mostly, we don't know any more than you know, but bear with us, we're working on it. But they kept saying that. Like every 10 minutes, they'd make an announcement. We're communicating, we're letting you know what's going on. And there's a level of transparency about their efforts, and they were in it with us, right? It was frustrating for them too. It wasn't like they were having fun while we were suffering at their alignment, right? They have a series of systems and a series of behind-the-scenes things going on in terms of figuring out what plane's going where and who's going to get off the ground and which crew's getting on this plane and how are we going to keep these customers satisfied and get them to where they need to be when that flight's no longer going to go where it was going to go before. But they have a system for seeing that interconnectedness and making it work, and it didn't get everybody where we wanted to be when we thought we were going to get there, but within a day or so, everybody was where they were trying to go. Transformation and continuous learning. I have to imagine that following this event, the Southwest Airlines team as a whole, the organization, did some reflecting. What did we learn from this experience? How can we do this better next time when something crashes in our computer system? And so they've engaged in a process of learning and of working to transform their organization in the direction of their mission and their vision. So we can talk about these things, but they're abstract, right? They're concepts that are sometimes hard to be able to wrap our heads around. So our last piece before we break for lunch is to give you a chance to look at a little bit of research related to each of these ideas. And so in your workbook, after the Systems Leadership Framework, and then behind the Systems Leadership Framework, you've got a copy of another framework, an instructional framework called the 5 Dimensions of Teaching and Learning that we've included because we'll be referencing it further into the Institute and especially at our targeted feedback sessions, but you can skip past that as well. And then you come to a section called Readings. We have 5 short readings. They're each 3 or 4 pages, probably a 5 to 7 minute read at most. And sort of similar to what we did with our poster distribution. Rather than have you spend the next hour reading, I'm going to ask you to spend the next 5 or 10 minutes reading one of these articles and connecting with someone else, with others. So this is the part where the logistics of it. Joe and I started to map this out, and then we realized you're smart people, you'll be able to figure out what we're trying to make happen here. So essentially, if you're a 1 or a 2, you're going to do the reading on trust, which is the first one that's in there, the Vivian Robinson piece. If you're a 3 or a 4, you're going to do the reading on communication. It's from an excerpt from a book called The Advantage by Michael Lencioni. If you're a 5 or a 6, you're going to read another piece from the alignment, from the Advantage that addresses alignment. 7s and 8s will read an article on transformation called the Change Leaders Roadmap. And then 9s and 10s will read an excerpt from Michael Fullen's The Principle called about continuous learning and innovation. Each of those readings, again, is just a few pages. This is not a lengthy reading assignment. Once we've read those, what we're going to ask you to do is, if you're an odd-numbered group, we're going to ask you to find yourself, to organize yourself on one side of the room so that you're in a group that's got each of these articles represented. So you'll have a 1, a 3, a 5, a 7, and a 9 in your little mini group. And on this side of the room, you'll have a 2, a 4, a 6, an 8, and a 10. So all 5 articles will be represented. And again, after the reading is done, you'll have a chance to share the big ideas from your reading. And I'm going to ask you as you read to see if you can identify 1, maybe 2 short quotes or passages that really capture a key concept or something that resonates with you about the how element that you're exploring from the systems leadership framework. Questions? Has everybody found the article that corresponds with your group number?
I'm seeing some heads saying no. You want to just say the numbers one more time?
Okay. 1s and 2s are reading about trust from student-centered leadership. 3s and 4s are reading about communication from the Advantage, and that's the page that, after the title page, it says Discipline 3. So we have 2 selections from that for the 5s and 6s are reading the other portion from the Advantage called Discipline 2, which addresses alignment. 7s and 8s are reading the Change Leaders Roadmap on Transformation. And 9s and 10s are reading this portion from the business. And they should be in your workbook in that order. So if you make your way through, you'll be able to find them. All right, so we will